There just isn't much evidence that humans need very much fat in our diets. Hey, everybody, I thought I would chat with you guys a little bit about this today. And when I make this discussion, I'm not telling you automatically that a high-fat diet is unhealthy, so I want to make that clear. I'm not telling you not to eat fat. I'm not telling you that you can't do those sort of things. All I am saying is that the evidence for us needing considerable amounts of fat in our diet or it being beneficial to our health just really doesn't appear to be present. And when I say that, it's what I mean is most fat is not essential. People bring that up. They'll say, well, but fats are essential. There's no essential carbohydrates. But there's very, very little essential fat. Okay, there's very little. Alpha-linoleic acid and linoleic acid are the only essential fats in your diet. That's it. Out of the dozens and dozens of different fatty acids. Okay, so we need to be clear with that. Most fats are not essential, and the only ones that are polyunsaturated. Okay, and essential means that your body can't produce them on its own. In other words, all the other fat types, your body can make them out of other stuff if it needs them for any reason. Okay, so that's something to think about for number one. Number two, we don't need that many of the essential ones. And in other words, yes, we have to have a little bit of fat in our diets. Okay, we have to have a little bit. But that amount that you need for optimal health is probably less than 20 total grams. Okay, do you see where we're going with that? You get people, well, I eat all this fat because I need it in my diet. Like your optimal intake of the ones that you need is probably, like again, if we're talking about absolutely optimizing health, it's probably somewhere between 15 and 20 grams. And there are people who have perfect health around the world who do even less than that. So just keeping that in context. Okay? Keeping that in context. The same thing when it comes to actual looking at the health of people on really low-fat diets around the world. Some of the longest lived, healthiest cultures and societies on earth have very, very, very low-fat diets. Now, does that mean all of them do? No. Some of them do. There's a tendency towards it. So the point here is that ultra-low fat isn't necessary for health, but it certainly can be healthy. Okay, in other words, again, we just don't have to have that much fat in our diets to be healthy. When we look at the epidemiology, we look at anything in the metabolic world, that appears to be the case. So the thing to remember is that, of course, you have to eat something. So when we make this statement, it's like, yes, we have to have a little bit of fat in our diet, but we also have to have calories. We also have to have food. We have to think about the fat-soluble vitamin N. But by that same token, if you eat foods that are very high in fat-soluble vitamins, you can get away with the lower absorption. So again, when you notice around the world very low-fat diets, if they're mostly whole foods, people do just fine. They don't suffer health problems from this. They don't have deficiencies. This gets brought up. Also, deficiencies. Okay, but are we really seeing this occur? Is this really a thing? Then why don't we see these deficiencies in those societies, like the Okinawans? We just don't. It's just not a real problem. Now, I want to state, though, we do have to eat calories from somewhere. You take someone like me who burns 3,500, 4,000 calories a day, I obviously have to get that from somewhere. So, for one person, they might choose to do that with fat. Another person might choose to do that with carbohydrates. Now, you're not going to really get that from protein. So we do need to be clear on that. You're not going to eat 2,500 calories of protein a day and utilize it correctly. You're actually just going to burn through huge amounts of energy. So again, and that would be something like 600 plus grams of protein a day. And people generally are not going to eat that. Even most bodybuilder types are not going to eat that much. So when we say we have to get the calories and our energy from somewhere, again, our context, not everyone is trying to lose weight and has a low amount of muscle and a low activity level. Okay. So yes, we have to get calories. Our goal for everyone isn't to get calories just as low as humanly possible. So you have to get them from somewhere. We have to eat something. And in many cases, fat can be perfectly acceptable. Some fats are going to be better than others. Okay? Obviously, your polyunsaturated fats are better. Obviously, your plant source fats in general, with some exceptions, are usually going to be a little bit better overall for health. And large amounts of saturated fat, we do know, is absolutely associated with poor health outcomes. But I'm not telling people they can't be in great health while still eating a fair amount of fat in their diet, or even a potentially high-fat diet, as long as it's the right types of fats and everything is balanced. They're physically active, those things. So again, you have that, then you have the personal preference. And I think what people have to remember, we have a cultural bias, like in the U.S., for example, towards fat, because we eat very high-fat diets traditionally. So we do have that cultural bias. So you do see that sometimes when dietitians are discussing stuff, or nutrition as well. We do need a certain amount of fats, but that's a cultural thing for us. Meaning our palates oftentimes like it because we've grown up eating fairly high-fat diets, right? We eat a lot of fat in this country, or just in Western society in general. But that's what we have grown up with. That's oftentimes what's in our cultures. It doesn't mean that's what we have to have. And I think people need to understand that difference, okay? And by that same token, there are many, many benefits potentially to very low-fat diets, particularly if you come back over to weight management and all of that. Now, am I saying that for some people running higher fat diets, if they're healthy fats that can reduce inflammation, can't be good for certain inflammatory markers and recovery and other stuff? No, it can be. Absolutely. Absolutely can be. Particularly if your diet is very high in polyunsaturated fats, non-refined ones, in the form of whole foods, nuts, fatty fish, things like that, right? Avocados, that can absolutely be an extremely healthy diet. And for many people, that sort of diet can help control certain amounts of inflammatory markers. Okay, but simply pointing out, there's no reason that the majority of people have to eat a significant amount of fat in their diet. The evidence for it isn't there. There's no reason biologically to think it's a case. It's just a personal preference in many cases, that some people simply prefer it who happen to be healthy. Okay? And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But I want it to be clear when people try to pretend that we need 20 or 30% or whatever that number is, that arbitrary made-up number, that we need that amount of fat in our diet to be healthy. It's just not an evidence-based thing. It's a number that people have completely made up, and quite frankly, if we go off the evidence, it's excessively high. But it's also possible for a person to be extremely healthy and fit while eating even more than that if everything is balanced out. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys and gals next time.